Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dharma Helper, and this is DH Reviews. This is my Season 1, Episode 7 review of Gotham. If you missed any of my previous reviews, there will be a link in the description of this video, as well as an annotation behind me on the screen. You can click either of those, and that'll take you right to the Gotham playlist. Also, earlier this week, I put out my Constantine Season 1, Episode 2 review. I will have a link in the description of this video to the playlist of Constantine for you to check that out. Season 1, Episode 7 of Gotham was called Penguin's Umbrella, and it sort of dealt with the aftermath of the reveal in the last episode where Penguin comes to Gotham's police department, and he reveals himself and all this stuff, and Fish and Carmine find out that Jim Gordon did not kill Penguin, and so Fish wants blood and that sort of storyline. And also in this episode, we get a little bit more escalation of the mob war between Maroni and Carmine and the aftermath of that, and sort of a flash of violence between the two of them. And then in this episode, a lot of alliances are made, and we're starting to see factions and alliances being formed in Gotham, and those alliances have a really big impact on the episode. So let's talk about Jim Gordon in the episode. And Jim, we see the soldier side of Jim, where he understands that now is the time for him to put up a fight. He goes into the police department. He's not afraid of Carmine or Fish or anybody. He gets all those guns together. He's ready to go. He's ready to fight, and nobody else is willing or ready to fight with him initially. He tries to get Harvey, and he says, you know what, Harvey, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to arrest you. I want you to fight with me. Let me help you, and you can help me. And Harvey's not having it initially, and then nobody in the police department is going to help him. And so he's really struggling to find good people in Gotham City. And then he has that whole showdown against Victor Zsasz in the police department, and he is rescued by the MCU, and so that sort of brings me to the first kind of alliance is Jim and the MCU and Alfred, and then later on Harvey sort of comes around, and their plan is to arrest the mayor and Carmine Falcone and show Gotham City that they don't have anything to be afraid of. And that's sort of Jim's plan in this episode, and it kind of backfires after he sends Barbara away from Gotham City, but she comes back to beg for his life for Carmine to spare Jim. And so the leverage that Jim had is sort of gone when Carmine says, I have Barbara, so you can either walk away from this or I'm going to go ahead and kill everybody. So the thing I want to talk about with Jim is now that he's got the support of Alfred and Bruce and Harvey and the MCU, how is his approach going to change in terms of fighting this corruption? Again, it goes back to what I've been saying. The stuff that he's been doing is not working, and it's not the way that things need to get done in Gotham City. And so he's got to change the way that he does stuff and the way that he approaches this corruption. But now he's got Bruce's money and influence, he's got the support of the MCU, and he's got his partner who Harvey showed a little bit of backbone in this episode and is able to, when all is said and done, support his partner Jim and sort of show flashes of what we saw in Spirit of the Goat, that cop that we saw from 10 years ago. So that sort of covers my thoughts on Jim. Again, I want to see what in him changes now that Carmine again has laid out the rules, and now that he sees that his plan, it was a good plan, but it's not the way that things are done in Gotham City. And another thing I'm kind of wondering is, now that we've seen that there are people in Gotham City, even Captain Essen, who has to kind of be told to leave by Jim, who are willing to, when all the chips are down, fight this corruption. It's just that first level of fear that they have to get past. Now that we've seen that, who else is going to step up? who else is going to say, Jim, I'm going to help you? Or is anybody else going to say that? So that's Jim for this episode. Let's jump over to Oswald and talk about Oswald's sort of journey in this episode. He goes to the GCPD, and my concern in the last episode was what level of protection was he going to be able to have now that Fish and Carmine know that he's alive? And initially it looks like Maroni's protecting him, and he's got that going for him. And then later on in the episode, we learn that the reason that he's not so concerned with showing himself is that he and Carmine have been working together. And he and Carmine sort of engineered that thing at the docks where Jim was supposed to be the one to pull the trigger, because they both anticipated that Jim would be reluctant to pull the trigger and he wouldn't actually do it. So that's going back to that theme of alliances. The alliance between Oswald and Carmine get a lot done in this episode, and they start off by undermining Maroni, and they have that whole thing where they block Maroni's shipment, and that causes Maroni to get mad, and Maroni looks for a way to strike back at Carmine, and Oswald gives him the perfect opportunity to do that by attacking a warehouse that Nikolai just happens to be at. And so Nikolai and those men are killed. And so that strikes a huge blow against Fish. And then on top of that, Oswald had paid a number of Maroni's guys off, and they were able to betray Maroni's right-hand man and kill him and blame it on Nikolai and Carmine. And so in this episode, Penguin and Carmine really do a lot of subterfuge, and they are able to strike at Fish, their primary enemy, and also Maroni, and allow Oswald to rise up in Maroni's ranks and be a more effective snitch. So that's kind of the thing with Oswald in this episode, and I'm wondering, again, what's his end game? Because he talks to Carmine about sparing Jim and all this stuff, and I'm wondering, when is he going to snap and turn against Maroni, and is he, are he, and Carmine ever going to be at odds? Which one of them is playing the other one, or are they both playing each other and just using each other for the time being out of a mutual sort of need to get rid of these people and these enemies? I think they are the most equally matched in terms of intelligence and reach, and what happens between them is going to be pretty cool to watch. Again, my money is on Carmine, and I'm backing Carmine 100% on this, because he's really chilled out, and everybody else is losing their minds. Maroni is losing his mind. He's angry as all get out. Fish is losing her mind. She's angry as all get out. They're not thinking clearly. The only one thinking clearly is Carmine, and to an extent Oswald. Oswald is a little bit loose in terms of a couple like screws in his head and stuff, where he might be a little bit out of it. But even with that, he's able to plan ahead all this different stuff, and he's able to get up on Fish and Maroni. And wrapping up my discussion on Oswald here, I'm kind of surprised that that plan, that mosaic that we saw, was not his plan. It was his and Carmine's plan. He suggested the plan, and Carmine sort of went along with it. But I was hoping kind of that was his own creation, and he was going to at one point, when he was done with Fish and Maroni, he was going to turn his attention to Carmine. That might still happen, but again, that whole reveal of the fact that the two of them worked on this together, it takes a little bit away from the genius that is Oswald, in my opinion. Talking very briefly about Carmine in this episode, again, he and Oswald worked together to undercut Fish and to infiltrate Maroni. But Carmine, who has been cool and calm and collected this whole time, really regains a lot of ground in this episode. He gets Indian Hills out of the Arkham district. He is no longer having to worry about Nikolai being a threat, and he has his spy, Oswald, for the time being, working with Maroni. And so it sort of goes to what I was saying about how Maroni and Fish are sort of tunnel visioned in on revenge and retribution and stuff like that. And meanwhile, Carmine is very calm, and he's just, letting things happen and letting things play out and reacting to it after the fact. Whereas, Maroni and Fish are just react, retribution, violence, and all this stuff. And they're eating each other apart. And Carmine is very slowly, very subtly sort of regaining a lot of the things that he lost in the Arkham contract and a lot of the things that Fish was building towards. What happens with Liza is going to be the most important thing for Carmine. Whether or not he realizes she's a spy, whether he turns her against Fish like he did with Penguin, that's going to be, if anything can bring Carmine down, that's going to be it. Because, his mother seems to be his blind spot. Or as Penguin says, when you find out what a man loves, you can kill him, you can beat him. And so that seems to be his blind spot, is his mother. And so to see where that plays out is going to be interesting. Going back to his interaction with Jim, he talks to Jim again about how Gotham works and how he's not the bad guy. So whether they can make an alliance, going back to that theme of alliances, whether they can make an alliance is going to be important in whether or not Carmine is able to stay afloat. And whether he actually is the bad guy or not is going to be interesting to explore. An interesting question for Jim to answer. So that covers Carmine, and again, just very briefly talking about Fish. She's pretty much a fish out of water at this point. Her figurehead, Nikolai, her pawn, Nikolai, is taken out. Carmine, as I said, is very aware of her plan to betray him. And so she's got nothing at this point. Her only ace in the hole is Liza, and I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep her alive. I don't know if that's going to be enough to drag her out of the hole that she's dug for herself, going up against Oswald, going up against Carmine. Let's talk about Harvey for just a brief second. Harvey in this episode finally kind of grows a conscience, like I said, and finally returns to that state of mind that we saw in, Spirit of the Goat, that 10 years ago, that cop that was eager and ready to get the bad guy. And all it took, surprisingly, was the threat of almost imminent death and no chance of success type scenario. So the repercussions of that, and now that we've seen that he's able to stand up to it, is going to be interesting for Harvey to explore and to wrestle with, because we know that he's capable of doing it now. We know that there's still that spark of the cop from 10 years ago there. And so what brings that out again is going to be interesting to look at. Montoya and Barbara. Now that Montoya is working closer with Jim, what strain is that going to put on that relationship? That's going to be interesting to explore. Barbara, again, sort of taking matters into her own hands and ruining things for Jim. And the I forget what Balloon Man, she leaked that news story and screwed Jim over then. And in this episode, she goes to Carmine and defies Jim's suggestion of leaving Gotham and screws Jim over. So the thing with Barbara is, how many times is she going to interfere with Jim doing his work? And at what point is he going to say, stop? Just do what I'm saying. Do what I tell you to do. Stop. It's going to be interesting to see what strain that has on their relationship, and that this is twice now that she's sort of thrown a wrench into his plans and made things more difficult for him. And so again, that relationship between Montoya, Jim, and Barbara is going to be something to watch and something to look out for. I think that covers all my thoughts on characters. So let's talk about my thoughts on the episode as a whole. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a solid episode. Nice reveals, nice setting things up. It almost felt like a finale type episode, which might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. I think they had 16 episodes initially, and now they have 22 episodes to play around with. So what sort of impact that has on the pace of things is going to be interesting. At one point, Carmine sends an assassin, like I said, Victor Zsasz, who is a comic book character, and he cuts himself every time he gets a kill and all this stuff. And I really enjoyed the interpretation of Gotham of Victor Zsasz in this episode. And seeing, again, that comic book sort of flavor make its way into the series was satisfying. And the more that we see from that, the better. Because, again, you have to establish your own flavor, your own tone for a series and separate it from the stuff that we already know, the Nolan universe, the animated universe, and establish your own sort of identity. And they've done that very well. They've done that very well to date, and they did that very well with Victor Zsasz. And so I was very happy to see that. And again, I want to see where these new alliances sort of shake out and what sort of shifts in Gotham we start to see now that Jim Gordon made his move. Even though it failed, the ripple effect has to be something that's noticeable. So where that falls and what we see from that is going to be pretty interesting to look at. Again, really good episode. I liked it, and if you liked it, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this review, leave a like so that I know I'm headed in the right direction, I'm doing the right thing here. If you want to see more reviews like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and you'll see those reviews as they come out. Mondays are Constantine, Tuesdays are Gotham, Wednesdays are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Thursdays are Scorpion. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I will not be doing a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. review because it's on break, but I will have a video for you guys to watch and look out for. So, watch that video. Some very important announcements coming up for the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter at the DH Reviews, again, comment down below or talk to me on Twitter about the episode. And again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.